You are listening to the Park Flyer Podcast.
Welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast, where we discuss the ups and downs of the new RC Flyer. Join your hosts, Michael and Jay, as they take flight at the park. Now on with the show.
Well, everybody, welcome to the Park Flyer Podcast. Tonight's episode's on batteries. This is Michael, and with me always is...
Jay from the AK.
How's it going tonight, Jay?
It's going pretty good.
Good. Hey, tonight we have a special guest. Why don't you go ahead and introduce him?
Well, this guy, he's hot, I tell you, all the way from California. And he's here to just lay down the law with us on safety. And who do we have but Mr. Kendall Pearson? Hey, Kendall.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good. Kendall, how are you?
Oh, it's another day in paradise. But funny enough, I think it's just as cold up in Alaska as it is here in California right now.
Yeah, without the snow.
Without
the snow.
Without the snow and the killer moose eye.
Yes, and the women. You know, come on. You know.
Can't go wrong with that. It actually was pretty chilly here as well. So
you guys are killing me.
You guys,
chilly.
Yeah. I actually had to wear a long sleeve shirt.
Yeah, and your 3/4 shorts, they go down to your knees because it's so cold.
That's right. Ooh. My 3/4 shorts. Absolutely.
Might even wear socks.
Wow.
I did have to wear socks. Not with sandals, though, so that's good. Well, tonight on our podcast, we're talking about Lipo Batteries. Lipo batteries are one of those things. They're fairly new. Not really fairly new. They've been around for a while. They have some idiosyncrasies, I think, to them, and they can be a great asset to our park flying world, but at the same time, they can be very dangerous as well. And I think that's why we have Kendall here. Tell us a little bit about what you fly and the type of flying you do with RC.
And give us a little background, too. You're not just an ordinary flyer off the street.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, boy. Well, this is the hard part where, I get to talk about myself and try and create credibility. Well, I think the biggest reason why I'm here is I spent the last 38 years as a professional firefighter. Presently, I'm a command officer in a fairly large fire department up here in Northern California. So I've gotten to see a few things and some battery difficulty, shall we say, and some things park flying and RC involved. Another qualification, if you want to call it that, is I'm actually an FAA certified flight instructor, instrument instructor. So got a little bit about the flying background. RC aircraft actually helped me learn how to teach students certain techniques, particularly like slips and skids, where it's difficult to visualize if you're sitting in the airplane. It's easy to see it from the outside, but it's difficult on the inside. That's the tough part. And then the third thing, so to be completely clear here, transparency, right, is the name of the game in the world. Jay is my brother-in-law.
No. I've never seen this. Listen, folks, I've never met this guy before. We saw him walking on the street corner.
So one of the issues that I have with Jay is, unfortunately, this has all been very one way, is that I seem to have developed all my hobbies have been handed down from my brother-in-law. So I've been draining my bank account because my brother-in-law has got me involved in different activities, one of them being RC airplanes. I'm not as deep into it as you guys are. I just have gotten up to basically the aileron trainer stage. But, I got a DX6 and I can play a little bit and fly in a slow stick and learned a couple of things. And I have a basic understanding of what's going on in the RC world. Not to act or speak super intelligently like you subject matter experts, but I'll do the best I can. I'll do the best I can to keep up.
Well, don't feel bad, Kendall. Jay actually spends my money faster than I can make it, so he is very good at spending my money.
It's what I do. I'm here. I am amused to bring joy to you fellows, and this is the heartache that I get from you. I can't believe it. It's tearing me up.
Yeah, you're amused, all right.
I'm trying to make this go back the other way, and I keep saying, Jay, come on down here. I'll teach you how to fly. And when you start flying something at $150 an hour, without the instructor, then you will truly know the vacuum that can be created in one's bank account.
Well, let's talk a little bit about batteries, shall we? what's the advantage of the Lipo battery there, Jay?
Well, okay, so when starting out with the neat thing about park flyers and the reason that it's grown so much in recent years is because batteries just about 8 years ago used to be made from nickel metal hydride and batteries, and they're rechargeable, but they were very, very heavy. And then with the advent of the cell phone, we got this neat little customer called the Lipo Battery, and that's lithium-ion polymer battery, I do believe. Lithium pile?
I believe you're correct.
Like
lithium polymer.
Yeah. Yep. And so the neat part about that is it had a great density for storing energy. And lo and behold, now you could have the power, and it was lightweight. Just pick up your cell phone. It's not like it's a MASH phone, from 1950 you have to crank. It's nice. It's light.
A bag phone.
Yeah, exactly. So with these batteries, they're super light, but they have a little problem where the nickel metal hydrate batteries, you could run them over with your car. You could chuck them out the window. You could do all sorts of things with them. These lithium polymer batteries, if you happen to puncture the skin, lithium, air, Mr. Safety, Mr. Firefighter, what happens when those particular metals get exposed to air?
Well, rapid oxidation usually.
Ooh.
Yeah, big terms. I guess I can kind of jump in here maybe a little bit talking about the battery chemistry. And please keep in mind that one of the things that's interesting about firefighters is that in a world of specialists, we are the generalists. So you have to know a little bit about everything. So a lot of my knowledge isn't super specific or technical, but it's enough to know what to try and do safely and try and handle it safely. One of the things that we've always been told about lithium polymer batteries, or LiPos, whatever you want to call them, is it's an unstable chemistry. And a lot of the battery systems that are using lithium polymer batteries, they have a computer circuit that manages the electrical flow in and out of that particular battery. Like you just plug in your iPhone, like down here in Northern Cal, it's iPhone City. It's a cord and you plug it into the wall. All of the maintenance of the battery chemistry and the charging is basically handled in a circuit within the telephone. Teslas, you guys have probably seen some of the things online. Large fires. I mean, when something happens in that vehicle and it damages the battery, it burns like crazy. Lithium polymer batteries. One of the things to consider is that there's a lot of circuitry that's involved maintaining that battery chemistry in most electronic devices. From my basic familiarity with RC airplanes, there's not a ton of that circuitry there. They do a pretty good job. Obviously, there's not flaming aircraft anyplace in the air all the time, but there is something to be said that I know all of us have not had the most gentlest of landings all the time with our aircraft.
Zoom, poof.
What? Yeah. No way.
Like shocker.
I land like butter every time.
Butter.
Everybody learns,
smooth.
Right? So there is some potential for doing some damage to that battery that's there, and then it may not show up immediately, but down the road when you're charging, it might, what's called puffing, the pack will expand, and then you'll be made aware of the damage itself.
Yeah, I have a bunch of them that are puffed up. Well, not a bunch, but I have several that are puffed up from me using them on my EDFs. So just sucked all the energy out of it, and boom, got big and fat. Now it won't fit in the EDF.
And you're still using them.
It's too big. Yeah, I use it, but I'm waiting for the day that my EDF looks like it just got shot down by, another aircraft.
Could happen.
Yeah.
There's just been a couple of, I don't know if you want to get into some of the events that I've seen with these things over the years, but
sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anytime there's a big fire involved, I want to know about it, man. That's
fire.
Well,
yeah, you can't go wrong. I mean, we're guys with RC airplanes, and there's a fire. Holy smokes!
Well,
what a great combo that is.
Not huge stuff, but I'll tell you a little bit of how I got to know about RC aircraft just briefly to give you the Reader's Digest version here. Jay sent me an airplane for Christmas. And I
sounds familiar.
Yeah, sounds familiar. So didn't have no flight simulator, no nothing. So okay, go for it. And it was some kind of an RTF, I don't know. It wasn't the slowest trainer type aircraft, let's say. So
He's good at that.
I pretty much figured out that I didn't know how to fly, but I tried, and I nosed that thing straight into the ground at full power at one point. So with a couple of conversations and diagnosis, I kind of figured out that I'd burned out the speed controller. I showed up at this local flying field that I knew was a bunch of guys. I'd seen them from driving around in my first in area from the fire department. And I stopped in and I just said, hey, can I ask you guys a question? And the guy said, yeah, what do you got? And I said, how do you verify the functionality of a speed controller? Like, can you put a meter on it? Can you tell when it's burned out or what? And then they inquired about why I was asking. And they said, okay, the first thing you do is throw that crap away. And then they hooked me up with a local RC shop. And within about a half an hour, I had a DX6 radio, a couple of recommendations of certain planes, and then they sent me over to a place, and I picked up a slow stick with all of the specifications written down for the motor and the batteries and everything I was supposed to get.
There you
so
go.
I got all that stuff together, and they said, don't worry about the battery charger at first. Come back to us because we don't want you to blow yourself up. I'm going, what do you mean by that?
That's always a good sign. This is going to be nice and safe hobby.
Yeah,
We want you to burn your house down, by the way.
Great. So not only is this expensive, but now I'm going to potentially expose my livelihood and my family to some sort of imperilment. So I said, okay. And I went and got the stuff and dutifully got my slow stick and figured out how to fly. And they shadowed me and 3 mistakes high, all that good stuff. And I learned from that. So then probably about a month later, after the guys had charged the 3 batteries that I had purchased, now I need the battery lesson. Give me the battery lesson. So out here, the battery charger of choice at the time for lithium polymer was called Thunder Power, and the batteries were all Thunder Power. And the charger that I had, or that I ended up purchasing, which was new at the time, it's been a while, you had to know what milliamps, you had to know what it was, and you had to basically manually program what you wanted to do so that you didn't overcharge it and cause yourself a problem. And one of the things that really struck me at this particular time was one of the guys says, oh yeah, I don't even take those batteries in the house. And he goes, in fact, check this out. So I go back to his car. He's got a trailer hitch with an ammo can basically bolted on top of this thing. He has a magazine is what he had. He goes, oh yeah, and he showed me a picture of his charging setup, and he goes, I do everything outside the house. It's not in the garage, nothing, just in case something happens. I'm like going, why? And one of the things I've found difficult is that if you specifically look for like almost any battery issue, but like a lithium polymer battery issue in the national reporting system from the fire department, there's like almost nothing that comes up. So this is one of those, kind of urban legend kind of things where It seems like most people say, hey, I heard about this guy that did this. Hey, I heard about this guy that had this happen. Right? Oh,
it's all hearsay.
Yeah, all kind of hearsay stuff. Even though the basic chemistry isn't necessarily supposed to be as stable as some of our old time stuff like nickel metal hydride or nickel cadmium or lead acid, it still seems like there is some issues. And we've all seen the Teslas that have been completely engulfed in fire after an accident. That's for real. We've all seen the stuff about hoverboards, the battery problems in the hoverboards.
Oh, yeah. Those are burning up all over the place.
And the issue is that it's cheap circuitry, so that the maintenance structure within the electronics isn't doing the job. That's what we're hearing from the fire side from the national reporting system. Stuff starts on fire, we have to do a report. It gets put into a national database, so we can draw information out to see what's happening. There's not a bunch of it because people don't get down to the lithium polymer level. They'll give you a manufacturer for what something is on the databases, but they haven't quite gotten up to speed with some of the new chemistries, and that's been a little bit of an issue.
I think you guys, out in California, of course, this year you guys have been having a horrible time with forest fires and things like that. And once again, it's there's a little bit of danger depending on where you fly. I mean, if you were to puncture the battery or you have a really bad crash or you were negligent in some way, I mean, it's drier than a tinder keg out where you are. So,
oh yeah.
I mean, have you had any problems with that out there? Or?
We absolutely have. In the one flying field that's in one of them is our first in area. Most people, most parks out here in Northern California in the more densely urban areas, the only thing they know from the old regulations is the Slimers, the gas-powered planes. And they strictly say, no, you can't use a gas-powered plane, in a public park. But they've seen most of the guys now, they don't want to be noisy. They're being polite to their neighbors, and they've been doing a lot of electric flying. So the authorities have generally sort of just turned the eye the other way. I can cite one particular incident that happened out in one of our parks here. And like you said, as the expression goes, it's drier than a popcorn fart, out there. The issue itself, and I'm not exactly sure if it was the battery issue or not, but somebody put a plane down, roughly, not that nice butter smooth landing like Mike. They put the plane down, and it basically augered in a field and started about a 6-acre wildland fire that we had to deal with. Fortunately, the wind was blowing, so it started the fire and then blew away from it. So we still had some fairly decent evidence. And I took a look at it, and I remember seeing obvious point of origin right where the impact of the aircraft was. It was difficult to tell if it was a post-fire explosion of the lithium polymer or if there was something that started at the battery itself and then lit off. Because, you're flying foam, for God's sake. I mean, it's petroleum-based stuff. It's going to burn. If any type of heat source pops up, it is going to burn. That's probably the biggest thing I can think of in our local area, specifically related to batteries with the local aircraft, local RC clubs. And these guys were mortified. They think they're on the edge of losing their flying field and stuff. And they've been good neighbors and great guys. But the parks guys said, hey, stuff happens, dude.
And accidents do happen. And once again, I have seen where somebody will have a speed control that's not quite up to snuff, like you were saying. Maybe it's only a 20 amp. They're flying something that's putting out 30 amps. And I have seen the wires on the escape get fused or they burn up. And then as the insulation burns off of them, then you get contact, and that causes the spark or a fire. It's not necessarily the battery goes bad or gets punctured, but you melt out the insulation off the wires, and that starts the fire. I've seen that a couple of times.
Well, Jay and I saw last E-Festival that we went to here in Arizona, that guy hit the ground at doing well over 150
Oh,
miles
yeah,
an
I
hour.
forgot about that.
His battery really didn't burst into flames. It smoked like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it was cooking off pretty good. But, I mean, it was a balsa wood airplane, and he went in. He had a little bit of a flutter in the elevator, and he was doing, 200 and something miles an hour, 210 or something. And he just came in, fluttered the elevator, and it just went bam right into the ground. And that was all she wrote. There was nothing but splinters. But it created a lot of smoke, and everybody ran over there and tried to, put some CO2.
Yeah, that's the good thing that was at that club that they had CO2.
Yeah, they had a fire extinguisher, but nobody would really get close to it.
Well,
They kept trying to pawn off the fire extinguisher to someone else. Hey, you go do it. I don't want to go do it.
Well, just as a curiosity question, I imagine in big competitions and conventions, and there's guys with fire extinguishers, but you guys take a fire extinguisher with you to your local field just to fly? Is there one out there?
No.
Not in the
contingent
park.
plan.
I mean, I don't.
No.
Yeah, that's probably one I should throw in I should probably throw one of those in the truck or something when we go out there. That's probably smart. But I mean, will the 2-cell 450 2-cell or 8? I mean, that's nothing compared to my 6-cell that I fly. Yeah. And so most of the stuff that we fly at the park, the little foamies, they only have a 2 or 3 cell. Is it going to cause as much damage as a bigger battery?
I think the biggest issue is now as far as starting something on fire if you land on it. It just depends on your local area. Wildland areas fly in the summer. You get some fuel moisture way down below 10%. Pretty much anything is going to start that. Any heat source whatsoever, whether it's a cigarette or someone dropping a match, or the famous chains dragging from a trailer throws into the wildland, the sparks from the metal contacting the asphalt. Right. I mean, when you get into an environment like that, we tell people, don't mow, don't use any metal blades like weed eaters or anything like that in the wildland area, because you're going to get one spark, and then you're going to get a fire. There's a thing called ignition component in the wildland fire world where they count 100 embers, and the ignition component is from 0 to 100. How many of those embers will actually start a fire? So when you get to that 10, the 10%, that's really dry. 10% or lower of fuel moisture, dry grass, whatever. When you're down there, the ignition component is almost 100. Every single ember spark that lands in the fuel bed is going to start a fire. So, it's an electric motor. It's an electric source. It creates heat, no matter what. So, there's a certain amount of discretion that has to happen here. Another part, not the wildland side of it, but depending on what part of the country you're in, they've lost a lot of favor lately, but shake shingle roofs. They're treated with a flame retardant in the beginning, but when that thing's 10, 20 years old, the flame retardant's basically worn off. So you put some kind of heat source, you crash it into a roof, shake shingle, there's another style of ignition source that could happen. Yeah, and that's, depending.
I don't technically crash on the roof. I just land on the roof. That's usually what I do.
I meant to do that.
Nice like butter on the roof,
Like
roof butter, new product.
That's right.
It's creamy.
Now, I don't know. I can't even count on two hands how many times I'm crawling around some neighbor's roof getting my plane.
Oh yeah.
I've had that.
And then there's the other potential that if you hit something, the prop is stuck and you've got the power turned up, you haven't realized it's crashed.
Right.
It's impedance. There's resistance there. Resistance is going to cause heat. So
right.
if you think of it as a term of it's a heat source. Very minor, in the big picture, because these things don't happen a lot. But we have had a couple things through the years where the stuff has popped up. Granted, we get way more problems from fireworks. People shooting out bottle rockets and stuff like that. But I think just like anything, the biggest thing is global awareness. Be aware of your environment and understand what the potential is. Think about the next step, not just let's take off and fly. Well, what happens if this happens? What happens if I land here?
Right.
What happens if I have a failure? That's something just to keep in mind down the road.
So now, have you ever run into any fire problems with people charging, like at the house? Have you had any home fires by people charging it, or is that still an urban myth as well?
We had again, specifically, there's a lot of technology going around out here in Northern California. We had a company that had a fire in their facility, not directly related to the batteries, but it caused us a little bit of concern because they had big batteries. There was a car battery company, and the fire got to the car battery, and we were hearing explosions. We're like, we're not going to go in there, and it was. No,
Get Mikey.
Okay, Jay.
Get Mikey. He'll do it.
Get in there, Jay.
Yeah. Well,
put this Scott pack on and get your butt in there.
As much as we like to say that we make our living walking into places everybody else is running out of, I always say, I can't be the smartest guy in the world because I'll put myself into that environment. But we make decisions based upon benefit. There's no benefit, forget it. This particular case, actually, it was a roof collapse from a winter storm that the roof drains, parapet roof style building, and the roof drains were plugged up with vegetation, leaves, and debris, and basically they put a swimming pool up on the roof, and when it got to Olympic caliber, the whole thing collapsed, and that's what started the fire.
Olympic swimming.
Yeah, pretty much. But the batteries themselves, in a structure fire, that was interesting going, because we're thinking it was propane tanks going off.
It was all the hydrogen.
But it was the actual batteries.
It was the actual
batteries.
Right? Yeah, it was actually the batteries in the battery chemistry that had been direct flame and heat impingement, and they were letting loose. So we're like going, yeah, okay. And then above and beyond that, it's a fire issue, it's a safety issue. Now it's a hazardous materials issue, because that Olympic-sized swimming pool on the roof is washing all that crap down into the storm drains, which goes into the creeks, which goes to the drinking water reservoir.
Yeah, because now it's sulfuric acid, right?
Yeah, nasty stuff.
Ooh, wonderful.
So it's hard to kind of nail down one specific topic when it comes to the batteries, because there is the explosive potential, there is the hazmat potential, there's the heat generation potential, always. does all that stuff wrap up to more than what like fireworks cause? No, it's not. But I can appreciate the discussion here. Just to, guys are being proactive and trying to figure out, okay, how can we avoid these horrible situations and not try to figure out my homeowner's insurance covers all this stuff.
Well, honestly, we had an incident. It's been several years ago, but you were talking earlier about the old style chargers where you had to know everything about it. And unfortunately, we had an individual who was a part of our club, and he actually put in the garage. He put his battery, his Lipo. This individual, he put his Lipo battery on the charger, and went inside and actually sat down and fell asleep in his recliner, just letting it charge. He had put it on lithium. He had put it on the.
He put on nickel metal hydride, the NiCad settings.
And so it started charging it, and this thing puffed up. It actually started his workbench on fire. And he had a couple of gas airplanes at one point, I think. And like Jay was talking about in an earlier podcast, it had some fuel soaked into the wood. Next thing you know, the whole house was ablaze. And unfortunately, we lost him in the blaze because he was asleep in the other room and was overcome by smoke. But it was a big deal, but it was that particular charger, the mishandling of the charger. It wasn't necessarily an explosive battery. But I honestly, I have gone out with a 3-cell lithium polymer battery, and I took my little fire poker and stuck a little hole in it, and then ran like heck to the other side of the house and watched it kind of fizzle. But it created a lot of smoke, but it didn't explode or it didn't come apart. It wasn't like a grenade going off, is what I'm saying. But it did get hot, and man, it created a whole lot of smoke. Bunch of white smoke coming out of that little hole, and it was just a pinprick hole.
I mean, fire fatalities nationwide, actually, talk about causing fires, is that it isn't, people don't get burned up, specifically, is that it's the products of combustion that are toxic with, cyanide and just all kinds of nasty chemicals in there, and that's what overwhelms people and causes the fire fatalities. So, it's like, it's no big deal. Just going to puff up and kind of smoke a little bit. But if it causes a free burning fire, burns kind of clean like your gas stove. It's the appropriate mixture of the hydrocarbon with oxygen to create an efficient flame. And it's what's called an incipient fire, or even a smoldering fire, where there may not be enough oxygen in the environment, or there's not enough heat potential to really get it, we call ripping. Full free burning. Those are worse. Carbon monoxide and any of the toxic chemicals.
Well, especially if it's in your basement, right? It starts in your basement. You go walking down there, get overcome by the fumes, et cetera, or you just think, it's not that bad. I'll open a window, and next thing you know, you're on the floor.
And some fires themselves. Especially up there in Alaska, where you guys are burning, stuff to stay warm.
We burn stuff all the time.
All the time. The point is that inefficient combustion is actually worse than a free burning fire if you're talking about life hazard. Now down here, if you sell a house, you're required to sell it with a carbon monoxide detector. But many homes do not have carbon monoxide detectors. And basically inefficient combustion, whether it's in your furnace, in your water heater, or for your lithium polymer battery charger that happens to be smoldering away, if you don't have a carbon monoxide detector, you're never going to know. And they call it the silent death. And what happens, the hemoglobin attaches, or the carbon monoxide attaches. It has forgive my lack of specific knowledge here from my paramedic days, but it's like a 4,000 times more affinity carbon monoxide has for hemoglobin than oxygen. So basically you suffocate because the oxygen won't transfer across membranes.
I'm feeling a little lightheaded, Jay.
Walk it off. Take a knee. Walk it off.
Have another beer.
Walk it off. Walk it off. So, Kendall, what type of charger do you use today?
I have an old Thunder Power charger. It's probably about 5 years old that I have to very specifically have my chart that the original guys gave me to make sure I understand what's going in and what's going out. But
okay, so I see a new birthday present coming up, if that's the case.
Yeah, I can say there too. And we just and they're on sale right now, right? I think I just saw them. They were on sale.
Well, it has been a little while since I've been flying the RC planes. Mostly I've been flying the full-size stuff now, teaching students. So One expensive hobby for another, right?
Yes. They're all expensive. That's all I have is expensive hobbies.
I don't think there's a cheap one, is there?
No. They're all behind me. You can see them all. My whole house is full of expensive hobbies.
I used to say,
matter of fact, it's the only reason my wife works is to fund my.
I used to say that my wife was my most expensive hobby, and the airplane has proved that wrong.
Yes, I get that. I understand that myself. Totally get that. So, Jay, you and I are Cell Pro users. We have Cell Pro Cell. What do they call those? The labs, Power Labs.
Yeah, Power Labs, and
they have like a special circuitry to kind of test the
right. It's basically the reason that the reason that I pushed on you to get this particular charger was just the thing that Kendall was talking about. The first charger I got was the same thing. You could switch between nickel metal hydride, the NEMA batteries, the Lipo batteries, and the problem was it was just a little knob, and if you didn't put the knob in the right position, you'd be charging it at the wrong rate, the wrong current rate, and you could burn that thing up in no time. This particular charger that we're talking about, and I'll put something in the show notes so you can see what it is. It's smart, and it's smarter than I am, and it's almost idiot-proof. I don't say 100% idiot-proof because they always come out with a better idiot.
You are
but,
an idiot.
And that's not a challenge because people are, I can make that thing fail. No, this thing's pretty smart that if you plug your battery in backwards, it won't charge it. It'll recognize that somehow you force those connectors in the opposite way, and it won't let you do that. If you are, it also has a little charging plug, so it can monitor each cell as it's charging. And if somehow you fit a 2-cell into a 3-cell, I don't know how you would do that, but if you did, it would recognize it and it wouldn't charge. It'd stop the charging process. If anything's out of over voltage or under voltage, it stops the process. It's a wonderful system. But like anything else, I will say in this hobby, like when I got my transmitter, did I read the manual? No. When I get my plane, do I read how to put it together? No. I'm a male. No. I don't like to read instructions, but I will say to all of our listeners, if there's one set of instructions that you should sit down and read, it's the one that comes with your charger. Now, luckily, thanks to technology, all the new chargers are coming out, and they're fairly smart to stop us from burning the house down. I say fairly,
although I've tried it once.
Yes.
Or twice. I've tried it once or twice. Because we use the buddy board,
right? The parallel charging
buddy boards, yeah, the parallel charging board.
So,
and I actually took a 2-cell or 3-cell battery and shoved it into a 4-cell.
Yeah, like I said, you got to be charging.
And about a second and a half later, I understood what I did wrong because it smelled terrible in there.
Yeah, you did a little arc welding, did you?
My battery heated up, it puffed up. Oh my gosh, my hand was all charred up. I jerked that thing out of there and I ran through the house with this thing burning and I'm whipping it around. I threw it outside in my backyard. My wife's like, "What are you doing in there?" I go, "I'm charging some batteries."
Nothing, honey.
Run around with the Febreze. Nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfectly safe. Nothing to see here.
I will say that plugging the battery directly into the Power Lab as a single battery, it is very, very smart. But when you start dividing it up into the power boards, you got to be a little more careful.
Yes.
Well, I think the bottom line really for all of this stuff is twofold. Technology is improving, no doubt about that. And then the second part of that, and I'm looking at this from a new guy's perspective, is that most of the new guys that are out there, I mean, that's all the stuff that I got was hand-me-down equipment. So it's not that it's necessarily bad or it's not functional, but if you have a manual device, you have to know the science behind it. You have to understand what you're using. So if you have something that's maybe an older model charger, it might work fine, but just make sure you know how to use it and don't do anything stupid. Follow the instructions.
Well, like you were saying, since this would probably be something that all three of us would definitely understand, I love checklists when it comes to things like that. A little 3-sentence little checklist on what to do. And you do it all the time, every time, the same time.
Well, as we all say, is that if you have something that is manually operated, then the responsibility goes back to the operator. The machine can be smart and newer technology is much smarter, but if you're using older technology or in some cases, less expensive technology that people might elect to get a manual charger.
We're all about
compared to
that.
Something new, you know?
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, yeah, well, just remember your responsibility goes up the dumber the device that you're using is, because supposedly you've got the intelligence to make it work.
Well, that's a big assumption. That
have you been talking to Becky lately? Because she didn't say that.
I did say supposedly. Okay,
Oh,
supposedly.
okay,
I
good.
qualified
supposedly.
that. Okay.
Jeez, man. Talk to your sister? No.
So Jay,
What's that, Mike?
So Jay, do you charge in the house though? Right? You're not an outside.
No, I
guy.
charge in the house because outside it's cold and there's bears.
Yes. Well, and I've always charged in the house as well, but I will tell you, I don't walk away from it. It's usually in the same room with me, or I'm in fairly close proximity. I don't plug it in and then leave, go away.
I will say,
even though it's pretty smart and it will shut off when it needs to shut off, I just usually don't walk away from it.
Okay, I will say I have walked away from mine, but I have a Lipo bag, and that's a neat little contraption. Where it's basically
That's true.
It's not made with asbestos. They don't make things with asbestos anymore. Kendall, what do they make that bag out of? But it's a flame retardant bag, and you slide.
It looks like duct tape.
It does look like duct tape, but you slide your batteries in there, and if you can go on YouTube and you can find a video with some of these bags, and where they purposely try to set these things on fire by overcharging them, and they'll catch on fire, but the bag will contain all the flames, not all the smoke, but at least the majority of the flames. So it makes it a little bit safer, and that's what I use when I'm charging big packs, or if I'm in and out of the room and I'm not paying attention to it or keeping an eye on it. So,
compared to you pros, since this is a hobby that I kind of come to and then put down for a while, then come back and put down for a while, my confidence level with the manual charger isn't that high. So I've always charged things outside, and I always do it off of a 12-volt battery. And usually also with an extension off on my car in the middle of my driveway. So if something does go off, there's no overhanging trees, no structures that are closed, all stucco.
Just the car.
That kind of stuff.
Just the car.
Poof. Yeah.
And who needs a car?
But keep it a little bit. It's not on the car, but that's always been my habit. And that's just me personally being just too anal about safety stuff because, it's a manual system. My confidence isn't that high, even though I'm following the instructions. So it probably would be fine doing it inside. But
so have you ever done that and then, had to go to work the next morning and jumped in your car? Oh, man, I was charging batteries.
The battery was dead.
Well, fortunately, these little milliamp batteries, and thank God, I'm not flying the big, exotic, expensive stuff like you guys are. I mean, I'm flying.
Okay, so Kendall, I went on early one morning, and everybody was there. We were all flying. I had my Cell Pro hooked up to my battery in my truck. I was charging battery after battery. Everybody in the club left. It was finally, I had flown pretty much the whole morning. Everybody kind of flew through their batteries and left. I'm the only guy there. I go, man, just one or two more flights. Put my airplanes up, jumped in the truck, dead as a doornail.
Man.
It sucked out it sucked out everything. I was flying with 3 and 4 cell batteries.
Wow.
So I did pull a lot of energy out of there.
Wow.
But yeah, it took that 12 volts and just drained that thing like you wouldn't believe. And now I'm having to call the wife and explain my battery's dead. And,
you are one
I can't go anywhere, and she had to come out and jump.
You didn't try to jump it with one of your leftover batteries?
I thought about that because the Cell Pro would have put it back in there, right? But I just hook them all up and put energy back.
Well, you could have done that way, or just grabbed yourself if you had a fairly decent sized 3-cell pack, you could have started your car up. A little ingenuity.
I probably could have it. Nah, I burned through them all. I flew. It was a great day of flying, man. I flew a bunch of different airplanes.
And I'm sure your wife has a pretty interesting. Her story's slightly different than yours.
Oh,
I was having a horrible day, and then Michael called me at the last minute. I was getting my hair done and
had to leave in the middle of it. Exactly.
Nice.
No doubt. Well, now that's another subject too that we could kind of touch on is actually flying the battery down because I've seen guys that will actually fly the battery down to nothing, down to 1%, and I'm not really sure, Kendall, you may know, but if you pulled all the energy out of the battery, could you still get to the point where it's trying to overcharge or pull more energy out that it would start a fire at that point, or does it just kill the battery altogether.
Well, I haven't seen anything like that, and I haven't seen any specific studies like it. Most of the time I've seen is something's been damaged, and that's been the cause of some sort of a heat source, some sort of instability in the chemistry that causes a heat source. I really don't have enough knowledge in that particular area to comment intelligently, but I can tell you that most of the folks that I watch in the flying fields where I'm at is, again, hand-me-down equipment, second, third generation stuff, that they don't have that fancy battery monitor on their radio. It's like, oh, it's a glider, bring it in. That's it, right? But there's like, it seems like there's the great chasm. You got the people coming with the brand new, the RTF stuff that's not big. It's made out of foam. It's not that expensive. And then you got the guys that are like, spaceship commanders, and they've got the full-size Corsairs that they're flying, that are all handmade and beautiful,
Sure.
With a Cabbage Patch doll-sized pilot in it, that kind of stuff. So there's two different things, and those guys, they've got the good equipment, with the monitoring equipment on it for their batteries, but most of the mere mortals like myself, they just fly it until it turns into a glider, and then hopefully it's close to the landing strip and they can put it back down again. So haven't seen any
I
issues.
can tell you that I never fly my batteries down below about 30%. Most of my batteries I'll fly if I have to go past half throttle on mine, it's coming back, because if you just drain the battery down to nothing, the next time you charge it, it takes more energy and your batteries will puff.
Yeah, Lipo batteries don't like going under 20%. They are not NEMA or NiCads, which you can drain down to 0 and then recharge them. It's not the same chemistry. You go down to 0% on a Lipo and then you charge it up again, it will recharge, but you won't get 100% out of the battery again. It might be 95%. And then the next time you charge it, it's going to be 93% because it gets damaged once you go under that 3.2 volts. It's just, you just don't do it. It's just bad. You will shorten the life on that battery substantially by doing that, by running it flat.
And most of the chargers that we use nowadays, they'll actually recognize that the voltage is so low that it can't put any more voltage back in. And unfortunately, that's how it works. It's a smart, it looks at it and says, if this is at 1% and I plug it in and I start uploading it at 2C, it's going to way overcharge this battery. It's going to heat up really quickly. So it just basically says, sorry, you're too low of a voltage. Now, I have had a couple batteries like that, and you can kind of trick them. I don't want to go into that.
Let's not bring that up. We're supposed to be helping the guys out there.
I know, but I'm just saying that it's better in all the way around. If you have a battery checker and you keep it somewhere into that 25 to 30 percentile, and learn what it feels like when your battery gets that low. Because if you're, like I said, most of my battery motor combinations, I only have to fly at half throttle. Unless I'm in a 3D situation, I fly at half throttle. When I start moving above half throttle to maintain forward flight, then I know my battery's starting to go down. Some guys have telemetry where they can actually tell their voltage. I think Alaska Mike has some telemetry stuff that he can see. I know some of the guys, one or two of the guys at my club have it. They can see voltages on their batteries. So if you have that capability, it's great. But if you don't, just be cognizant of it and check your batteries and try to keep them somewhere.
Right, Kendall, you have a timer, right? I think I gave you one, or you got one, or it just you figured it out. Yeah, okay. So that's, if you're old school like Kendall, you can get yourself a little egg timer or a little digital timer, and you put in there 5 minutes or 4 minutes. And the whole idea is you fly for, like, say 3 minutes, you land. If you have a battery checker or something, you see what the voltage is, and you can figure out how long you can fly for on the average. And then you just set your timer and know that plane I can fly 5 minutes, or that plane I can fly 10 minutes. But it's really important because, once again, you don't want to go below 20%. And two, I pretty much like to charge my battery or discharge my batteries to about 30 to 40% on the average, which seems kind of high, but then it doesn't take as long to recharge them. So if I'm recharging at the field, it only takes half an hour or 20 minutes to recharge that battery as opposed to a full hour. I can rotate my stock a lot quicker by not discharging them out all the way down to 30% or 20%.
I mean, that might be another conversation to have, is that I'm sure the newer chargers do a better job at this, but when you start talking about charge rate, I mean, doing a slower charge, putting stuff in, getting it charged up, compared to we call it either flash charging or there's other things, but trying to turn up your amperage and then basically fill the tank up faster. That's impedance, heat causes another issue.
True.
Some of the older chargers, you could basically turn up the juice, for lack of a better technical term here. I'm not familiar with the newer smart chargers, so I'm assuming that there's some sort of...
It's the same thing. You could tell it, I want to charge at 2C, 3C, 4C, 5C, whatever. And if you try to charge it at too higher C, that's beyond your power source, or that the battery can take, that's where the smart charger comes in and says, you tell it, I want to charge in 5 minutes, 10C, and it's going to go, you got 2 D-cell batteries with some tape on it. I'm only going to give you 500 milliamps. That's it, buddy. I don't know what you're asking me for, but you ain't going to get it.
Ours usually give us an error code if you try to do something that it doesn't really like, because it'll actually measure the heat resistance or whatever that goes through it, and if it's too great, it'll come up with an error code that says we're unable.
Yeah, that kind of stuff doesn't exist in the hand-me-down equipment, so to speak. So just something to be aware of.
Yeah. The Cell Pro chargers are fairly expensive. I think we popped off about $250.
Yeah, at the time when they were fairly new, but you can get something that's that equivalent about $150. For a good setup, it's worth the money. And those chargers can do a lot, and they're safe. Now, you don't, once again, as a brand new guy, you don't have to put out $150 for these things. You can get a cheap charger that ranges anywhere from $10 to $50. They're, run of the mill. They don't do anything special. They'll charge your battery safely, but it's going to take an hour or two. You're going to be waiting for these things to charge because they charge at such a slow rate as to not damage the battery or do anything harmful.
Right.
So it just takes a little bit longer.
And then, it would increase the longevity of the battery also, for, future use, and kind of makes sense to gently use your equipment so you get as much out of it as you can.
Yeah, because batteries are not super expensive these days, but the longer you can make it last, the better. I have batteries, I think, that I had back in 2010 that I've used.
You blow the dust off of them?
I blew the dust off, plugged them in. They still work. They're a little puffy, but I still use them. So, Kendall, what's a good way to dispose of these batteries?
That's an excellent thing. Now, most cities in the more urban environments, they have their recycle bins and all that, and it's always fun that, no problem, I'll just throw them in the recycle bins. If you look at the websites or the documentation that comes with your trash cans, basically your recycle bins, they usually tell you don't put batteries in the trash. I don't exactly know what the heck they expect people to do with them. So usually what happens, like car tires, for example, as a silly parallel. If you want to take them to the dump, they usually charge you $10 a tire to drop them off. So what usually happens?
I throw them in the ocean.
Vacant lot or a creek bed down the street, right? That's like, okay, it doesn't work out. One of the things I would tell most people to do is that most every county will have what they call a household hazardous waste program. And really, a battery with the chemistry we're talking about, lithium polymer or nickel metal hydride or whatever, it's a hazardous material. It's not something that you want to get into a landfill. It's not something you want to have any type of effect for groundwater, groundwater contamination, that kind of stuff. Any county should have a household hazardous waste program. Anyone. So checking in with your local authorities to find out what they might have. Some of the other places, and depending on what kind of business you're in or the volume, a lot of times the auto parts stores, they take battery cores for automotive stuff, and it's a different chemistry, mind you, but they're sort of in the business of recycling batteries. I might check with an auto parts store or any kind of battery supplier, the Interstate people or anybody else. If they don't have a specific program for homeowners, they could direct you to where that might be. But I would say first check with your local government folks, see what kind of household hazardous waste type thing you might have. And then beyond that, auto parts stores or, even some of your local hardware stores that sell those products, they usually have a requirement to take them back in.
So Kendall, I have this old tired battery. I charged it up. It only goes to 75%. It's old. It's tired. I've checked the programs that you talked about. I think I have one. So do I just take it right down there and just give it to those guys, or should I discharge it first, or do something? Is there a safe way to discharge those batteries?
Well, I think
stab it with your fork and just make it. There you go.
Just put it through your leaf mulcher outside and bring them all the residue.
Okay, we're gonna get letters.
No problem.
we're gonna be getting letters. Oh no, come on.
That would be an example of what not to do.
Oh,
folks.
that's right.
Right.
Do not do these things.
I think the big thing we always talk about, and I think one of the reasons why they don't want you to throw batteries in a standard waste receptacle, is there's conductive material. You got your aluminum foil or your soup cans or whatever. And if for some reason something makes a circuit, it's going to create heat. So I think that's one of the things. I mean, the safest thing that you could possibly do is that if it's discharged without any potential of causing heat, that's probably the best thing you can do.
Yeah. I heard that like throwing it in a tub of salt water or in water and letting it sit in there for an hour or two is a good way to discharge them.
That's nothing I would recommend, quite honestly. I mean,
holy smokes, that's how I get rid of mine. I take a big bucket, walk outside, throw them, I just pour salt water, throw all my batteries in there, and let them sit for about 4 days.
It's not a process that I'm familiar with, quite honestly, because all I'm thinking is that you're creating another hazmat problem. And I know
that's probably true.
And I know what you're doing is that you're
my dog likes it though. He thinks it tastes yummy.
Great. Gonna have
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
More
PETA people out there.
Heavy metal poops. Great. Yeah. What's my dog?
My dog's got a third eye and his tongue hangs out the wrong way.
Hearing problems.
No.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, for as long as I can remember, though, everybody at my club, everybody talks about that. They pour salt water in a bucket, throw those batteries in there. It does discharge. You can actually see the bubbles coming out of the leads. And by the time a couple of days, I usually leave it a couple of days. But then when you take it out, it's pretty benign. I mean, there's no charge able to. It corrodes the leads. It does everything. It just totally destroys that battery.
Well, basically, the salt is the conductor, and you're putting it in a medium that conducts and then discharges the electricity within the volume of the water. I mean, that makes sense. That might be part of a commercial process maybe that I'm not familiar with. Haven't ran into one of those businesses around here. No, not familiar. Once again, I probably would check with and again, it's hard to say, okay, check with the authorities. Like, okay, what are you guys doing again? Where you been dumping that water? Oh, man.
Did I say water? No, it's a friend of mine.
My house.
It's a friend of mine.
Yeah,
it's a friend of mine. But, I guess the theory would be that if you're going to get rid of the water, if you put it in the sanitary sewer system, that would stay out of groundwater and keep you out of trouble. In other words, the toilet or the shower, the drains, probably the toilet, but depending on what kind of volume you're doing, I'd be maybe concerned that there might be some sort of corrosive nature to the liquid, and then you'd cause yourself a plumbing issue. But that's probably extreme, just thinking on the extreme safe side of things. But yeah, nothing I've heard of. I mean, I don't know. Is there some sort of guidance document, or is that the "some guy told me so" policy manual?
That's a "some guy told me."
That
could be kind of like one of those.
Yeah,
it's kind of one of those urban legends. It's just
Well, for me, I live in Arizona, so another 3 days in the bucket, all that water's evaporated anyway, so I don't have any water to dispose of.
Yeah, and we just throw ours in the fire pit, so, hey.
Just evaporate the water and then throw all the residue in your water softener, and you're good to go.
That's right, exactly. Man, my wife can't figure out why her hair's all green now. It's like... I just told her she bought some bad shampoo, but
that's the way the kids are wearing that hairstyle these days, honey.
Inverse mohawk. What happened?
Yes, exactly. All my hair fell out and I glow in the dark.
It's a Sinead O'Connor look. It's coming back.
There you go. Sinead O'Connor. Nice.
Old school.
Well, so do you know anything about the new graphene batteries? I know Hobby King has come out with this new graphene stuff. It's more of I think like a carbon or graphite conductor, and I don't know if that's any safer or.
That's an unknown from my side. I haven't even heard of that chemistry out here.
We actually have a guy that used to be in a club of mine down in the south part of town that actually does a lot of testing for that. He's a battery guy. I should give him a call. See, he could talk to us about the actual chemistry part of it.
Say, what are they using that battery in? What kind of equipment?
The graphene? That's a RC battery. It's a lithium.
Yeah, it's brand new. Graphene has just hit the
hit
the circuits here, I guess, within the past year that it's come out. Yeah. And it was invented by a guy in like Ohio or something. And it's just basically carbon that they've been able to do a certain type of matrix with it. It stores a lot of energy, but I have not heard of like the batteries exploding or having that's something it doesn't have like where the Lipos have it. You can open the batteries up and, if it gets exposed to air, no problem. It doesn't care. It's all carbon. There's no lithium like in Lipos and stuff. So it's a lot safer.
And actually the new iPhone series, they use that type. But don't ask me how I know that. Because
oh, yeah.
I was able to see that.
Yes.
Yeah, I ran over mine about 65 miles an hour. I ran over my phone because I had left it on the hood of my car. And it slid up from underneath and it totally tore it up. So when I went back to find it, I really didn't find the phone. I found the pieces. But one of those was actually a bag that had all that carbon in it. I dumped it out and it had a little stamp on it that said battery. And I knew what it was. It was a battery. But, man, that carbon stuff was everywhere.
Well, that's definitely the holy grail for the next millionaire is coming up with an efficient battery chemistry. That's the secret basically to all of our energy woes, according to all of our tech people out here.
The next 10 years, I give it 10 years.
Yep.
Sodium batteries.
Something super efficient. Yeah, big time.
You say sodium batteries?
Mm-hmm. That's
well, what happened to the 1, 2, 3 phase? Because that was a big deal for a little bit just a few years ago.
I don't know.
Everybody thought that was the next big thing.
Yeah, and it was kind of short-lived, wasn't it? I mean, they still use them.
They were so heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were so heavy. They're very efficient. I mean, you could power a lot of stuff. We'll have to talk to Jim because I think Jim used, when he set his world record with his quad, he used a 1, 2, 3 battery.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to have him on. That'll be pretty interesting. Hey, Kendall, I was just looking at the little clock on the wall, and it seems that our time with you is over. So would you like to say anything for a safety benefit for our folks out there as head fireman of California?
Don't do anything stupid. No.
There you go.
I mean, words to live by, folks.
I tell you, it's a double-edged sword. Is that, we like to say human stupidity is our job security, and there's no lack of work. If people get smart, I'll be out of a job. That's one thing. I think the bigger ticket mostly that global awareness and think about the next step.
Oh, that's pretty deep.
I know. I'm sorry. Understand what's going on around you.
That's
the first part. And then think about what is the potential of what's next. What could happen if, is a contingency plan. What's the next thing that might happen? And, that's a fire guy based thing. Drives my wife absolutely crazy. It's like, why are you walking around the car all the time before you get in the car? I says, well, because I want to make sure the kids are inside. There's nothing hanging off the vehicle. It's safe to go or good to move. No problem. So, well, why do you do that? I says, well, over the years, I've seen plenty of kids get run over by their parents or their relatives because they didn't know where the kid was. Global awareness, right? Just done. But that's experiential learning on my part. And it would be nice to be able to have everybody plugged into all of our emergency services people's experience. One of the things we do frequently is, more and more you have these, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot moments like, how the hell did that happen?
We've had a few of those in our lives.
That's not a daily occurrence. I thought that was part of getting older. Every time I wake up, I have an experience like that.
I know we have our minor indiscretions, shall we say, but when something's big enough where you got to call the fire department, that's a big deal. And a lot of times that people they don't think about the next step. But probably the other thing is, don't be afraid to call 911. I mean, really, people go, on average, the national average is someone calls 911 2.1 times in their lifetime, and that's national average. But don't feel silly, don't feel stupid if you don't know something. And the bigger ticket item is call early, especially when it comes to fire. Fire, if it has heat, fuel, and oxygen in unlimited supplies, it will double exponentially every 3 seconds.
Whoa.
So 2 cubic feet, 4 cubic feet, 16 cubic feet, and so on and so forth. But it'll double every 3 seconds. It moves that quickly. And we have people that Christmas time, pretty standard, dry Christmas trees, all that stuff. They'll have something happen, electrical short, whatever, something starts on fire. They go, I'm just going to go to the kitchen, get a pot of water, and go back and throw it on it to make it go away, instead of calling 911 immediately, and the whole living room's on fire by the time they get back. So just the explosive potential or the exponential expansion of that form of energy catches a lot of people off guard. It's like, just get out of the house, take your cell phone, call 911, and just wait for us. Don't believe me. It's just stuff. You can replace stuff. You can't replace people.
Yeah, that'd make me mad because all my lithium polymer batteries are under the Christmas tree.
Hopefully discharged.
You just burned up all my batteries.
Hopefully discharged.
I have a little fort made over here with mine. Okay.
Awesome.
They're all stacked in a little Jenga.
All right.
Well, hey, it's been a pleasure to have you on our podcast tonight, Kendall. We really appreciate your words of wisdom, and we want you to stay safe out there. We also want our listeners to stay safe, so look into your battery charger. Make sure you're doing the right things. I will tell you that I went to Costco not too long ago, and they had those 50 caliber
ammo cans.
Yeah, they had 2 of them, and they were for like $14. So look around at your local Costco, see if they have a pallet of those. I bought 2 or 3 sets, and I brought them home specifically for my Lipo batteries to kind of keep them in there, because the plastic tub I was keeping them in, I guess, made me nervous after Jay and I had been talking about it. So I got some of those, and hopefully I'll store them in there and charge some in there. So you just got to remember to drill a hole in the side of it. Otherwise, you're just creating a big ammo can bomb.
That's true. Containment.
So
appreciate you guys having me very much. It's a good topic, and hopefully it's the value of a couple of folks out there. Take some takeaways.
Well, we think it is, and if you actually thought that it was good value, give us a comment. If you had any questions about it, we can send to Kendall. We'll post some of this stuff in our show notes. And what else do you have for us, Jay?
Well, I was just thinking of having Kendall on maybe another time for another safety day. I mean, I know we have a little incident podcast coming up with cuts and bruises and such from the RC hobby and stuff, but I think we should have him back on with his paramedic degree as well to talk about some topics for some other hazards that can happen while we're out there park flying that he could probably relay.
Anytime. Be happy to come back.
Excellent.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for participating with us, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Take care.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight and listening to our podcast. If you have a chance, go to iTunes and download us and like us. We could use your support.
Yeah, that's true. If you can always find us on Stitcher Radio or iTunes, Intune, go to the subscribe page of our website, take a look at it. Give us a like on iTunes, help us increase our listening audience, and we appreciate a star rating as well. Thanks for joining us here at the Park Flyer Podcast. As always, I'm Michael.
And I'm Jay from the AK.
And you have a great night. We'll see you. Good night.
Night.
You have been listening to the Park Flyer Podcast. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your next visit. Please give our show a star rating and review, And feel free to email us your questions, topics, or suggestions to parkflyerpodcast@gmail.com.